I guess.
And then Rampage happened.
And then Twitter discourse happens because Twitter
and then all the boys got upset that a girl was bleeding
from her face.
Because
listen, if you don't, my biggest, if I could just sum it up in one thing, if you're not bleeding in a street fight, you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to bleed in a street fight.
This is one of those times where let the wrestlers be wrestlers is actually true.
Yeah.
They're not like stop. They're not girl. It's not. They're having a street. Wrestlers are having a street fight. They
with
are
weapons. Like she had the spot that it happened in. She had a trash can over her head, and then she was double stomped. Like they jumped down and double stomped on her.
And I understand.
You don't think she's gonna bleed?
We just talked about like a guy that was a predator, and I understand the violence against women is something that people struggle with. But again, the landscape of wrestling is changing, and women are wrestlers.
Right.
So,
and they
want to explore their art the same way that male wrestlers do, and that means doing death matches, maybe, or doing street fights, or
right. And Daza makes a good point, which I think a lot of people have talked about. That the reactions pissed him off. No one would complain if Moxley was bleeding. They'd be saying what a badass he is, because Moxley bleeds, and it's a joke now. Moxley bleeds almost every single match. The joke is, how long will it take him? He literally beat Wheeler Yuta till he bled to put him in the Blackpool Combat Club. How many times did Hangman bleed during a match when he was champion? The women don't.
Cody Rhodes was the master of bleeding.
Yeah. I mean,
he couldn't have a match without
blood. Yeah, exactly. And that was the long-running joke about
bleed himself on principle. He just walked down the road.
That's been the long-running joke about him. And now he's in WWE. And yes, they're a little bit less. They're less bloody with TV, but don't think Cody Rhodes won't find a way around it.
They don't do bloody self-mutilation, okay, Sam?
Sure.
I was at WrestleMania 19, by the way, guys. There were a lot buckets. Literal buckets.
So I just don't understand. I mean, and then though it's not like the women bleed that often in their matches. Like, so because people like blood in AEW is overdone, but it's a street fight. It's not just a random match. It's they're supposed to.
They're doing a style of match. Like, it wouldn't make sense to do a street fight and be all like, eh.
Right. And Willow, the blood on Willow was Ruby's blood, but still it does. But I mean, Ty, because the women had a street fight on Rampage New Year's Eve of 2021, and Ty was the one who bled. Her face was covered in blood, and like obviously
was
the one time
with the barbed wire with
the Queen there, because Anna Jay went for that move early on Willow, because that's how they won the first street fight, was she did the Queen Slayer with the barbed wire around her arm. So I mean, but Ty is, she bled. I do think Anna Jay bled in that match, but I mean, there was a picture of Ty and her face is covered in blood. Like, it's a street. And then you think of, look at Eddie Kingston when they were in the blood, was it the Blood and Guts match? No, not Blood and Guts, the Anarchy in the Arena.
Yeah.
Look how much Eddie Kingston bled and tried to set a man on fire.
Yeah.
But Ruby Soho can't bleed in a street fight? Get the hell out of here. Get off of
I have this conversation because I have most of my close friends are men. And so we have conversations about the like don't hit girls and all the things that we talk about, like intergender and stuff. But in this case, it's like this is a style of match that some wrestlers are doing. Period. Like, that is it. Get over it. Like, some of the best matches I've seen Penelope have there have been
Penelope was in that street fight. She was in it was her and the bunny.
She actually impressed me because I'm not really into her gig, but that was like, whoa.
And that's kind of what she did some stuff like that on the indies. I don't remember if she bled a lot like that, but she did some of that stuff. And Daza and Brad have pointed out that Ruby was the star of that match and she was a standout. And Daza says, I hope AEW promote this a lot because at the street fight last year they hardly mentioned it after, which is true. But then they sold shirts with a bloody Britt Baker's face on it when it was, I mean, that was an accident. I mean, not that this was on purpose, but that was kind of like the Becky Lynch moment where she wasn't supposed to bleed and it became this iconic thing that happened with Britt. But then, if I remember correctly, when Britt and Thunder Rosa did the cage match, there was blood in that match too, which you would think because it's a cage match, like they're supposed to bleed. And yes, Willow did look like a badass. No,
they're not. They're girls. They're not supposed to bleed.
Willow did look like a badass. Like, I already loved her, but and if I love the story that her and Ruby have been telling, where Ruby because Ruby is the very stoic and doesn't. Not that she, and then Willow's obviously bubbly and smiles all the time. And then how she like begrudgingly took Willow on as a tag team partner. They've picked up a couple wins. And then that kind of like solidified their bond, is like, we just kicked ass together in a street fight in the main event, which I will also point out. I'm very happy on Friday night. There were 2 women main event matches because Impact was having their Hard to Kill pay-per-view, and Jordan Grace and Mickie James main evented over on Impact. So that was a nice thing to see, to have the women main eventing. We just need to get the women main eventing pay-per-views in AEW.
Yeah, someday. Maybe.
Maybe.